Welcome back to Pivot to Profit, the podcast where personal growth meets business strategy. And I'm your host, TaVia Wooley. If you are here today, that means you are someone who is done playing small. You are done staying in your lane when you know deep down inside that you are ready to play big. You're ready to jump into big leagues. Today, we're going to get into something that I see come up time and time again with the people that I work with. The people that I coach, the people that I talk to at every event and in every networking room, every DM in my box begins with this. And that thing is positioning. But I want to take it even further today than we usually go. Because here's what I've noticed. Most people think positioning is just about getting a better job, a better title, or charging more for their services. And yes, it absolutely includes all of those things. But what I really want you to walk away with today is this. You have the knowledge, the experience, and the perspective to solve problems that are bigger than you realize. The issue is you've been thinking about your expertise too small. You've been framing it too narrowly. And as a result, the people who most need you and the problems you were literally built to solve cannot find you. So today I'm going to walk you through how to go from being the person who does the work to the recognized expert, to something even more powerful, a thought leader. A thought leader who is addressing systemic challenges and creating real scalable change. Get your notes app open, grab your journal, pull over if you have to, because that's how serious it is. Because this one is going to shift something in you. So let's get into it. You have heard me talk about the worker bee trap and why it's bigger than you think. So let me paint the picture. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You are the person everyone calls when something needs to get done. Your colleagues know your name. Your boss can count on you. You are reliable, you are capable, and you deliver every single time. But here's the thing. When there's a big decision to be made, they don't call you. When they need someone to lead a new initiative, to sit at the strategy table, to be the face of something, they look past you. Does that sound familiar? That, my friend, is what I call the worker bee trap. And I want to be clear, the worker bee is incredibly valuable. Remember, had a whole podcast episode about it. Every organization needs worker bees. But the worker bee is known for completing tasks, not leading them. They're known for their output, not their vision. And when you're positioned as the worker bee, that is a ceiling people put on you, even if you have way more to offer. Here's the most important thing I want you to hear right now. This is definitely not about your ability. This is about your positioning. People who get seen as experts, as thought leaders, are the ones who get hired to consult, to speak, and to advise. They're not always the most talented people in the room. They are the people who have learned how to frame themselves so that the right people see them. Not only see them, but see them the right way. So now let me introduce you to someone. I work with a lot of nonprofit leaders, and I want you to think about someone. Let's call her Diane. Diane has spent 22 years running an early childhood education nonprofit. She's built programs from scratch. She's trained dozens of teachers. She's supported hundreds of families, 0 to 5. She knows this field inside and out. She sounds amazing, right? Yes. But Diane is burnt out. She loves the work, but she wants to do more. Remember, more is money, opportunities, resources, and experiences. She wants to consult. She wants to speak. She wants to help other organizations get better. She wants to take everything she knows and multiply its impact. The problem? Well, when Diane introduces herself, she simply says, I run a nonprofit that works with kids 0 to 5. And the people she's talking to think, oh, well, that's nice. And they move on. Diane's positioning is keeping her stuck. But here's what's really happening. Diane has been so focused on the day-to-day of her singular program that she hasn't stopped to ask herself a bigger question. She hasn't asked, is the problem bigger than my organization? Are there people beyond my direct community who need what I've learned? Yes, there are. The answer, as we'll see today, is duh. And the same is true for you. Before we can position you as a thought leader, we have to do something that might feel uncomfortable at first. We have to zoom out. Most of us are so deep in our work that we only see the immediate problem in front of us. Diane sees kids who aren't ready for kindergarten. The HR professional sees a team with high turnover. The health coach sees client who can't stay consistent. We see the symptom, the person, the case right in front of us. But a thought leader sees the system. A thought leader asks, why does this problem keep happening? Who else is affected by this problem? What happens if it goes unaddressed? I want to give you a set of questions, and these are questions I use with every single client when we're beginning the work of positioning that I call the singular focus to global perspective questions. I know, big words, right? And I want you to really sit with these because this is where your thought leadership is born. So here they are. Action step number 1. You want to zoom out, and here are the questions. Does the issue I work on impact more people than I'm currently serving? Who else might be affected directly or indirectly by this problem? Are there hidden or long-term consequences if this issue goes unaddressed? What ripple effects happen over time if nothing changes? Does this issue intersect with other systemic problems? And this is the big one, y'all. Because very rarely does a problem exist in its own little vacuum, in its own isolation. Very rarely. Let me give you a perfect example. Diane's work in early childhood education, she sees children who come to school unprepared. But when she zooms out, when she asks those questions, you know the one I just gave you? She starts to see something much larger. The gap in her field isn't just about curriculum. It's about parent engagement. And parent engagement intersects with workforce challenges because parents who are working 2 and 3 jobs don't have time to reinforce learning at home, which intersects with economic inequality, which intersects with access to affordable childcare, which intersects with gender inequality because it is disproportionately women, and particularly women of color, who bear the weight of these gaps. Diane's work is just not about teaching kids. It's connected to a systemic, multi-generational problem. That is thought leadership territory. I know, and Diane just thought she was helping kids get ready for kindergarten. You need to ask yourself, what is the bigger system that your expertise lives inside of? Here's another question for you. Are there stakeholders you should be engaging that haven't been considered yet? Could someone outside your usual circle, a policymaker, a community organization, an academic institution, offer insights that deepen your solution? Here's the 5th question. Who might be impacted that I've been overlooking? Non-English speaking communities, people with special needs, marginalized groups who face compounding issues? When you sit with these questions and answer them honestly, you stop being the person who runs a program and you start becoming the person who understands a problem at a systemic level. This is the foundation of thought leadership. So now that you've zoomed out and you can see your problem in its bigger context, the next step is to form your thought leadership. And this is where we build the structure that is going to carry your expertise into the world. I want to walk you through what I call the thought leadership development framework. 8 steps that will take you from I know a lot about this topic to I am the recognized expert solving this problem at scale. So let's move through these together. Step 1, define the systemic problem. This is where you clearly articulate not just what you do, but the larger problem you are solving. And you do this with 3 anchors. You name the problem, you name who is impacted, your stakeholders, and you name the consequences if it goes unaddressed. Diane's problem statement might sound like this. The systemic problem I address is the gap between early childhood, education programming, and family engagement. This impacts children, parents, educators, and ultimately the communities where these children will grow up. So left unaddressed, this gap perpetuates cycles of academic underperformance, workforce challenges, and economic inequity. Feel the difference? She is no longer describing a nonprofit. She is describing a mission with systemic stakes. So action step number 2, write your problem statement. So action step number 2, write your problem statement using those anchors. The problem, who it impacts, and what happens if it goes unresolved. So step 2, identify your unique perspective. This is the question at the heart of all thought leadership. What do you see that others don't? Your years of experience have given you insight that is genuinely yours. Your job is to name it and own it. Ask yourself, what is my personal or professional experience with this problem? How does my approach differ from what already exists? And trust me, you have a distinct difference from everyone else. What can I say that no one else can say quite the same way? Diane's unique insight: most early childhood programs treat the family as a recipient of the information, not a partner in learning. Her approach is different. She builds what she calls a bridge between the classroom and the home environment. That perspective is specific. It is differentiated. And it's hers. Let's move on to step 3. We want to research and validate. Here's where a lot of people stop. They have the insight, but they don't back it up. And this is what separates an opinion from thought leadership. You need data. You need case studies. You need to know what research says about the problem you are describing. This doesn't mean you need a PhD. It means you need to do your homework. Find the gaps in existing research. Collect real stories from the people you serve. Validate your framework through your own experience. Outcomes you've helped create. When you can say, here's what the data shows, here's what I've observed in my 22 years, and here's why my approach addresses the gap that existing solutions miss. That is credibility. That is authority. So let's move on to step 4. Develop your content strategy. You didn't know you was going to be a content creator, did you? Well, let's look at that a little differently. You cannot be a thought leader in silence. You have to share your perspective. Kind of like how I come on this podcast and I share my perspective, something like that. And you have to share your perspective consistently, strategically, and across multiple platforms. Pick 2 or 3 channels where your target audience lives: LinkedIn, a podcast, speaking engagements, a newsletter. Create content that's rooted in storytelling and actionable insights. Not just information, but transformation. The goal is not to show people how much you know. The goal is to show people that you understand their problem and that you have a way through it. Step 5, building strategic partnerships. We've talked about this before, but let's get into it from a different perspective. Thought leadership is not built alone. Who are the organizations, the advocates, institutions that are already working on problems adjacent to yours? Those are your partners. Collaborating with them amplifies your reach and deepens your credibility and accelerates the impact of your work. Don't think about competition. We ain't got time for that. Think about collaboration. The problem is big enough for all of you. Lord knows the problem is big and there's enough people who can help solve it. So step 6, we want to engage the audience that we're creating the content for. Thought leadership is not a monologue. I know this podcast kind of feels like one, but I promise you it's not. It's a conversation. The most powerful thing you can do is create space for the people you serve to share their experience, ask their questions, and feel seen. Host Q&A sessions, host polls, respond to comments, and make people feel like they are part of a community that is working toward something together. Now, step 7 and 8, measure and establish long-term authority. You want to track what's working, what content resonates, where are people engaging, and use that feedback to refine your approach. And think long-term. Would that consist of a white paper, an annual event, an online course? These are the things that build a legacy of thought leadership that outlasts any single post or speaking gig. So now let's get into the next thing. We want to upgrade your language and your title. Here's where I think so many people get tripped up. They've done the inner work, which is great. They've zoomed out, which is even better. They have a framework, kudos. But the moment they open their mouth and introduce themselves, they shrink. They get real small. They say things like, I used to work in education. Or I kind of help nonprofits with their problems. That doesn't even sound confident. Ugh. Or I'm just trying to get into consulting. Listen, Linda, listen. Don't do that. Your language has to match the thought leader you are becoming. And it starts with your introduction. Because whether it's a networking event, a podcast interview, or a LinkedIn bio, or simply a cold email, the way you introduce yourself is the first thing that shapes how people see you. So here's a formula I'm going to share with you. You might want to write this down. I like to call this the thought leader introduction formula. I am, put your name, my role, your title, with X years of experience in such and such field. Let me say that again. I am, insert your name, your title or a role with however many years of experience in insert your field. Then you move on to say, I specialize in, then insert the problem you are addressing, and I help insert the target audience, the people you want to work with, to achieve a specific outcome. All right, so you want to tell them what you're going to achieve through, and then you insert your framework or your approach. Let's apply this to Diane. Diane, she's still around. Are you ready? Now remember, she used to say, I'm Diane, I run a nonprofit for kids 0 to 5. Okay. After, she's going to say, I am an early childhood education strategist with over 20 years experience in direct programming and family engagement. I address the systemic gap between classroom learning and home reinforcement, helping early childhood organizations build the family partnerships that drive lasting academic and community outcomes. Same person, same background, but now she is not describing a job, she is describing a mission. She is speaking to a systemic problem, and the people who hear her, funders, policymakers, fellow leaders, will lean in. So here's an action step for you. Write down your introduction using the formula. Give yourself the title. Speak to the systemic problem. Reference your approach. Make it 2 to 3 sentences that make you stand a little taller when you say them out loud. And I want you to add something important here, especially for those of you who were raised to be humble, to not take up too much space, to let your work speak for itself. I need you to hear this. Claiming your expertise is not arrogance, it is accuracy. You have years, maybe decades of real knowledge, real experience, and real results. The people who need what you have to offer cannot find you if you are hiding. Tara Mohr, in her book, Playing Big, talks about this exact barrier. The internal voice that says, who am I to claim this title, to lead this conversation, to be the expert? And Mohr's answer is the same as mine. That voice is not wisdom, it is fear. And the world needs you to move past it. So the final piece is this: learning to communicate yourself as the solution in real time and in real conversations with real people. This is where positioning becomes a practice. And the most important skill in this practice is not talking, it is listening. Here's what I mean. When you're in a conversation with someone and your target audience, aka people you actually want to work with, your job in that moment is to listen deeply. For what? For the problem, for the frustration, for the gap that they are experiencing, even if they cannot name it themselves. All right, that's actually very important. And then when you respond, you reflect their problem back to them in a way that connects your expertise. So let me show you what this looks like with Diane. Good old Diane. She's at a conference, right? She's talking to an executive director of a community organization. The ED says, we've invested so much in our after-school program, but we're just not seeing the results we expected. The worker bee, Diane, says, oh yeah, that's tough. I've been there. The thought leader, Diane, says, that's actually a pattern I see consistently across early childhood and after-school programs. The program itself is often strong, but there's a gap between what happens in the room and what happens at home. Without that bridge to the family environment, kids aren't getting the reinforcement they need to retain what they're learning. That's exactly the problem my framework is designed to address. Same knowledge, completely different positioning. And now that ED is leaning in and asking for a follow-up conversation. Next up, I want you to write down 2 or 3 most common problems your target audience faces. Then write a 1 to 2 sentence response to each. Something that reflects their problem back, connects it to the systemic issues you've identified, and naturally introduces your expertise as the bridge. Practice these until they feel like second nature. This is how you stop being someone who knows things and start being the person people call when they need a solution. Before I wrap up, I have to speak to the thing that lives underneath every framework, every formula, every step I just gave you. and that is your belief in yourself. I could give you the most elegant positioning statement in the world, but if you do not believe that your experience, your perspective, your insight have real value, people will feel that. They will sense the hesitation and they will move on. So here's your final action step, and it might be the most important one. Write down 10 specific outcomes you have helped create in your career. Not job duties, outcomes. Things you can point to and say, this happened because I showed up, because I knew what to do, and because I brought my expertise to bear. When imposter syndrome creeps in, and it will, you come back to this list because this list is the truth, not the story your fear tells you. It's the receipts. And you know we love some receipts. Denise Brosseau, in her book, Ready to be a Thought Leader, makes this point powerfully. Thought leadership is not about having more knowledge than everyone. It's about having the courage to share what you uniquely know and the commitment to build a platform from which to share it. You already have the knowledge. Now it's time to build the platform. So it's time for me to wrap this up. Today we covered the full arc, from worker bee to subject matter expert to a thought leader. Here is the roadmap. Zoom out. Use the global perspective questions to expand your view beyond your immediate work and see the systemic problems your expertise lives inside. Step 2, form your thought leadership framework. Define the systemic problem. Identify your unique perspective and validate it with research. Build a content and partnership strategy. Engage, measure, and establish long-term authority. Step 3, upgrade your language. Use a thought leader introduction formula. Give yourself the title. Speak to the systemic problem. Stop shrinking. Step 4, communicate yourself as the solution. Listen deeply, reflect the problem, and connect it to your expertise. Be the bridge. Step 5, anchor in evidence. Your evidence list is your confidence foundation. Return to it often. Your homework this week, do all 5 action steps. And when you have written your new positioning statement, that final cohesive statement that says who you are, what problem you solve, who you serve, and how, I want you to share it. Post it. Hey, and tag me in it. Send it to me. I want to celebrate you stepping into your full version of your expertise. This is not just about your career. This is about the people who are waiting for the solution you have to offer. And remember, you're the only person positioned to offer that solution. Don't keep them waiting. I'm TaVia Wooley, and this is Pivot to Profit, where personal growth meets business strategy. I'll see you next time, where we keep turning your purpose into your profit.